Okay, welcome to another Happy Histories video. And I've brought you here to introduce you to Thomas Coram. This statue is here in Bloomsbury, and it's very close to where he established the first children's charity, a Foundling hospital. But let me tell you how that came about. Thomas Coram was born in the late 1600s, and at the age of 11, he went to sea. His father was a mariner, and he went there to learn his trade. And he was going backwards and forwards to America. And he really established himself in America, and he made a lot of money through his... he was a shipwright and a merchant, and he made a lot of money. He didn't get on terribly well in America because he was anti-slavery. He was standing up for the Indians and defending them, and he was a staunch Anglican when the Americans were revolting. So at the age of 36 he came back to this country, and he was from Devon originally, but he came back to live in London, and he was living in Rotherhithe, and he would travel into London, about 4 or 5 miles, and he noticed on the way there were a lot of children abandoned on the street. London was thriving at the moment. The empire was just starting off, and people would come into the city trying to find work. And, young ladies would become pregnant, and they were destitute on the street. And there's a lot of infanticide. People were killing their children. And Thomas Coram, he said, something has to be done. So he petitioned, royalty, the wealthy people, for 17 years, but he was having very little luck. And then he changed tack, and he actually approached the wife of one of the wealthiest people in the country, and he appealed to her. And her maternal instincts she was very generous, and she spoke to her friends, and eventually in 1640s a hospital was founded just behind this. You could hear the kids playing in a playground there, and behind that there was a big Foundling hospital. But it was too small, really. There were so many mums coming with their kids that there had to be kind of an interview process to decide who to take on. They couldn't take on absolutely everybody. And it was a heartbreaking thing, because the mums would go in and the children would be examined to make sure that they were healthy. And if they decided to take them, the children would be sent out to the country for 5 years to be brought up by a wet nurse who was healthier in the countryside, and they had food and shelter. These wet nurses, they were paid. Then they'd be brought back to the school. They would be taught, they'd be given a basic education, housed, fed. And then, typically the young boys they would find apprenticeships for them. And if their bosses didn't like them, they'd be returned. They'd find another line of work. But an awful lot of them went into the military, either the Royal Navy or the Army, but very often as bandsmen, because there was a very strong musical tradition with the hospital. Because as well as the rich and the wealthy, he also appealed to William Hogarth, for example, the painter. And William Hogarth, he donated a lot of his paintings to the hospital. And in fact, behind us here, we have the museum. And in there, they have, lots and lots of paintings that were donated to the hospital. And all of them, the themes are from the Bible, where people are looking after children. And the other thing, another great donator was George Frederick Handel. And he made the Messiah, the piece of church music. Initially, it had its premiere in Dublin. It wasn't terribly successful, but he performed it here at the Foundling Hospital, and lots of all the wealthy people came, and on an annual basis he would perform the Messiah free of charge, and all of the funds went to the hospital. And in fact, they have musical instruments from Handel. His will is here, and the scores of his music are here. He wanted to fund the hospital. He was very, very generous. But consequently, the children, they had a chapel here, and they would be taught to sing and perform and play musical instruments. And people would come to church. They'd have wonderful music, and they could see beautiful art, and they would donate. So a lot of these children, they went into music, the bands of various regiments. Some of the story, it was really magnificent. But some of the stories are absolutely heartbreaking. For example, there was one young man, and he was there right at the very beginning when the hospital was founded. And when the kids came in, they figured, okay, completely clean sweep. Mums can't look after them, so they were given a new name. Now, King George was in charge at the time, so he got the name George King, and he studied here and so forth. And then he went out and he was living his life, but he was press-ganged into the Royal Navy, and he actually fought at Trafalgar. And at the end of his life, he was actually at the Chelsea, the home for Chelsea pensioners, retired servicemen. But he actually wrote about his life. Another lady, I can't remember her name, but she was sentenced to death. She had one child and she was carrying another baby, and she was sentenced to death for clipping coins. Coins were made of precious metals at the time. She was cutting off bits, and this was a capital crime. And she was sentenced to death, but she wasn't executed immediately. They waited until the child was born, and then they carried out the sentence. But she actually wrote to the hospital and said, please, will you look after my two children and make sure that they know each other? Because very often there was a clean sweep, new name, and very often the only way that a mother would be able to, if later on, if she wanted to collect her child, the only way she could do it was by, come with me a moment. The mums, they were very often illiterate, so they would leave a little keepsake like this. So they would say, look, this is this boy's name now, and he was left with this. So if mum came back to claim them, they would say, and they've got lots of items that were given to them. But thankfully, the kids were cared for here, and they knew that they were brothers, and they had a reasonably good life. In the 1920s, the hospital was demolished, and they were going to build other buildings there, but it's been saved now as a park. And I really wanted to do some filming over there, because they got a very sweet sign on the wall. It says, no parents allowed, no adults allowed, unless accompanied by a child. And we started to film just to show you. It's on the site of the old hospital. It's very beautiful, but we were told to go away because it was unsafe. Quite right too. So that's why I brought you here to the museum. Okay, I think that's enough to be getting on with. Thank you for watching, and look out for more videos.